None shall ever surpass my count, but I will not lose myself. If this is all that remains of the honor of the World Eaters, then I am glad to be called their betrayer. Blood and pain and nothing more.
The anguish of the earth absolves our eyes, till beauty shines in all that we can see. War is our scourge, yet war has made us wise, and fighting for our freedom, we are free. Horror of wounds and anger at the foe, and loss of things desired, all these must pass. We are the Happy Legion, for we know time's but a golden wind that shakes the grass. There was an hour when we were loth to part from life we longed to share no less than others. Now, having claimed this heritage of heart, what need we more, my comrades and my brothers?
I have slain many enemies and won many battles, and I tell you there is no great secret to success in war, no subtle trick of strategy that has saved my foes. I seek out the enemy, attack as soon as I am able, and with all the force at my command, rend his soldiers and smash his fortresses, leave only corpses behind me, and then move on. Thus my Primarch has taught me, and I find his wisdom has proved worthy on 100 battlefields. The Betrayer, Centurion of the 12th Legion, leader of the Butcher Horde, and the champion of Khorne, Kharn, the name that has struck fear into the hearts of the Imperium for over 10,000 years. A man who was once a respected soldier in the Imperium's armies now spills oceans of blood in the name of his dark god. But how has he become the living embodiment of rage and slaughter? What journey did he endure that has left this corrupted, hateful creature in his wake? His journey begins on Terra. It is the closing days of the 30th millennium, and the homeworld of humanity has been united under the leadership of the Emperor of mankind. For millennia, humanity has spread to the stars, only for it all to crumble. The far-flung colonies of man, all separated by the age of strife, were alone in the darkness of space. But the dawn of a new age had come. The Emperor, a figure of immense power, wisdom, and will, has united Terra, bringing the divided city-states, techno-barbarian warlords, and various other polities under the Imperium of mankind. With a united world, the Emperor sought to unify the lost colonies of mankind under one banner, under one united species, a civilization that will lead us back to our zenith, the Great Crusade. For this reconquest of the galaxy, the Emperor needed soldiers, and so crafted from his own genetics, he created 20 sons, his Primarchs. Superhuman demigod figures, and like how they were his sons, he created sons for them, the Legiones Astartes. They shall be my finest warriors, these men who give of themselves to me. Like clay I shall mold them, and in the furnace of war I shall forge them. They shall be the iron will and steely sinew. In great armor I shall clad them, and with the mightiest weapons shall they be armed. They will be untouched by plague or disease. No sickness shall blight them. They shall have such tactics, strategies, and machines that no foe will best them in battle. They are my bulwark against the terror. They are the defenders of humanity. They are my space marines, and they shall know no fear. For these vast armies, thousands of recruits were needed, and so across Terra, In their droves, young boys were offered a chance to go to the stars, to conquer the galaxy. Amongst these thousands was a young boy who would become the man, Kharn. Only those who showed innate strength and will were worthy to be elevated to mankind's elite. The young boy Kharn would leave everything he knew behind. Family and friends who loved him would never see him again. He was trained in combat, educated with tactics and philosophies that would guide him through the galaxy. The imperial truth, the rejection of mysticism, and the enlightenment of science was poured into his adolescent brain. His temperament was acknowledged, and he was assigned to the legion that best melded with his personality, the 12th Legion, the Warhounds, a legion known for their direct, ferocious nature. As the boy Kharn aged, he and the other neophytes were taken into dark gene labs below Terra. Kharn may have been afraid, he may have been excited, but as he lay on that cold steel table, it did not matter. Who he was before didn't matter. The memories, the faces of his previous life would all be gone in what happened next. Kharn was cut open. New organs grown from the gene seed of a Primarch were melded into his body. Chemicals and hormones flooded his veins. The pain would forever be one of the most excruciating things he would ever experience. He survived, though many of his comrades would not survive this process. The boy from Terra was dead, and who emerged was Kharn the Astarte. His body was scarred, but he healed quickly. When the adolescent Kharn awoke, he had changed in ways that were more than just physical. His mind became honed. Emotions such as fear, attraction, and sorrow were almost entirely purged. You could sometimes catch yourself in that mindset. That cold, calculating wave that envelops you. A feeling where you could accomplish anything with that apathetic iron will. Kharn and the other survivors were taken to the world of Bot. They would be the last recruits of the Legion from Terra, as the Great Crusade was beginning, and they would soon be spread to the corners of the galaxy. With their surgery scars still fresh, the recruits were put face to face with Centurion Gruner, a veteran of the Unification Wars on Terra. The figure before them was enormous, with bunched muscles, scars and enhancement. Kharn and the others were nervous, daunted by what lay in store. From a burlap sack at Gruner's hip, the Centurion produced an object and held it out reverently, a polished human skull. All legionaries compete in the contest. The rules are simple. First to reach 1,000 skulls wins. One neophyte raised his hand, asking what would they win. Even Kharn raised his hand, asking where did they get the skulls from. Gruner's howling laugh would be a humiliation Kharn would never forget, nor the lesson about the nature of his new home. War is our scourge, yet war has made us wise, and fighting for our freedom, we are free. Kharn found himself amongst brothers who enjoyed war. The feeling of crushing an enemy, your blood pumping, and the strength they wielded. The Legion's culture imprinted upon him heavily. As he grew and finally became a man, Kharn was a deadly instrument of war. He had been trained ruthlessly for years. Failure in battle was not tolerated. Surrender was literally never considered. And mercy to an enemy was a quick death to a worthy foe. The lessons of Gruner, the heritage of heart of the 12th Legion, was that of conquerors. They weren't scholars or priests, they were warriors. Men and boys were often taken from feral worlds during the Great Crusade, as only those with that inner flame were worthy. The Legion even had their own language, Nagra Kali, a way to bond the various recruits under one unified culture. Kharn began to feel the wisdom of this way of life, a truth about brotherhood, that even if he liked or hated his fellow Astartes, they were bound by the bond of brotherhood. They swore oaths to the Emperor and to each other, an oath of moment. For those in our world who have seen war, they understand this unspoken bond that forms between men, putting their lives on the line. Kharn's brutal legion had formed him into the perfect soldier, but his skills in physical combat set him apart from his brothers. Favoring his chain axe, he was a beast on the battlefield, his natural skills melding perfectly with his hot-blooded warhound temperament. As the years of the Great Crusade mounted, Kharn went to war and fought on an untold number of battlefields against horrifying Xenos and non-compliant colonies of mankind. With such a legion, only the strongest earned recognition, and with a tally of victories under his belt, Kharn was promoted to captain of the 8th Assault Company, earning respect and recognition even outside of his legion. Kharn's almost primordial fury in battle, combined with his honorable, easy nature outside of it, meant that others loved this charismatic figure. He had friendships outside the Legion, such as with Argul Tal, Garviel Loken, Sigismund, Jubal Khan, and Nasir Amit. Over decades, Kharn had forged a bond with them through war, dueling and fighting besides many, tapping into the world of unspoken understanding that soldiers know. The Legion and Kharn were veterans of war, a legion with a strong martial condition and service to the Emperor. But after decades, the news came that they had all been waiting for. The news that would change them forever. Their Primarch had been found. Angron was clutching at the metal tracery poking out through his mane.
Fast. We moved fast. Not hanging between walls. Entrapment is death. Fast. Trust and discipline. Never rest. Always forwards. Hunger for the enemy. That's what they taught us. Oh, my brothers and sisters. Oh, if we had have known how it would end. We didn't know.
Angron fell to his knees and howled.
All that valor. The eaters of cities they called us. All the mountains' fastnesses burning like beacons. All the great coast painted in blood. We devoured Hosian with flames. Miahor, Al-Kaim.
Weeping and roaring, he leapt to his feet, oblivious to Kharn looking on.
We broke them at the river before Al-Kaim, hung 500 high riders and kin guard from the vine bridges. The princelings' heads floating on the river, down to the lowlands as our heralds. The silver lace from their skull. Ripped from their skulls, wrapped on my fists.
The furnace rage was back. Kharn thought to shuffle away and dismiss the idea. He would not hide from Angron any more than he would fight him, and Angron would find him anywhere in this room anyway. And no sooner had he finished that thought than he had been wrenched from the ground by each arm and swung over the Primarch's head to be slammed into the floor. Stone cracked under him.
They paid! They paid! We made them pay!
Angron kicked Kharn across the floor, bellowing.
Paid for my brothers and sisters! Who will pay?
Dizzy, fainting, Kharn felt himself picked up and slammed down again, kicked again, grabbed by the neck.
Pay, Warhound! Pay! Fight me!
Something, fist, foot, crashed into his chest. and Kharn sprawled on the floor choking.
Get up and fight!
The end of it then.
Kharn thought.
Well, I carried my embassy as well as a warhound could.
He tried to rise and couldn't, so he lay full length on his back and spoke weakly into the air.
You are my Primarch and my General, Lord Angron. I swore I would seek you out and follow you, and I will not fight you. And if I must die, then yours is the hand I will die by. I am Kharn, and I am loyal to your will.
While he waited, he faded from consciousness, then jerked back as his system shifted itself to rouse him, and the pain of his injury sharpened. He could not hear or see Angron, but he could feel the stone floor underneath him and the cool air in his lungs. When it came, Angron's voice was frighteningly close, almost by his ear.
You are warriors, Kharn.
The Primarch said.
I know warriors when I see them.
Kharn tried to answer, but pain rippled through his neck and chest when he tried to speak.
This Emperor,
Angron said, palpably struggling to keep his voice level.
He is the one you swore to.
We swore to each other.
Kharn managed to get out.
In his name and on his banner.
His breath took a long time to come.
That we would not raise a hand against you.
Angron said nothing for a time. Kharn's consciousness had begun to flicker again by the time he spoke.
Such devotion from such warriors.
His voice trailed off, faded and returned. His hands were pressed to his head again.
A man who can. A man to whom your oaths. For him you would.
Minutes passed. Angron's voice came again.
This room. I can leave it.
It took Kharn a moment to work out how to answer.
This is the flagship of the Warhounds, our greatest vessel. It is the instrument of your will and yours to command, Primarch, as are we.
For a long time there was no answer, just quiet and dark. And just as Kharn was starting to feel his consciousness go again, he felt himself lifted, slowly and gently now, and carried through the dark. Kharn and the Warhounds had fought for decades on the front lines of the Great Crusade. An unspoken jealousy lay under the skin of the 12th Legion. With the scattering of the Primarchs before the Great Crusade, the 20 legions were leaderless. Their gene fathers were ripped from the Imperium's side and were scattered across the galaxy. As the Great Crusade expanded, they began to find these long-lost Primarchs. Each legion was reunited with their true leader, the man responsible for their transformation. They were incredible demigod figures. Kharn felt an overwhelming reverence when he saw them. The aura, the prowess, the tactical genius. Kharn and the 12th, each time their fellow legions were reunited with their Primarchs, were jealous, and the anticipation grew for decades. Then the news came. Their father had been found on the world of Nuceria. Kharn and his brothers must have been elated. The Emperor of Mankind teleported the Primarch aboard the Legionaries' flagship, the Conqueror, and then their joy turned to ash. Angron, the Primarch of the 12th Legion, was nothing like his brothers. When Kharn and his brothers looked upon him, they didn't feel that awe-inspiring presence. Their Primarch was the only one not to conquer his homeworld. Angron had been a slave, a gladiator who killed for sport. He was broken. On top of the Primarch's scalp was a cybernetic implant called the Butcher's Nails, a horrific device that rewired the poor subject's brain to levels of untold aggression and fury, only giving the poor subject pleasure and peace when in the midst of blood-curdling combat. When the leadership of the Warhounds attempted to approach him, the Primarch tore them apart. One by one, veterans of the Great Crusade, brothers to Kharn, walked to their deaths as they attempted to reason with their broken bloodsire. The Legion was in limbo, and with most of its leadership dead, Kharn volunteered. Some of his brothers protested, wanting to die in his place, but a Warhound doesn't back down out of fear. As Kharn walked to his death, he remembered his fellow legions, their excitement and wonder as they met their father, and how he wished it was so. As Kharn entered the dark chamber, he was immediately set upon by a hulking figure that was Angron. He was beaten, his breath hammered out of his lungs as he was thrown around like a ragdoll. Angron had been taken from his homeworld in the midst of a slave uprising. Angron Thalkir, they called him, Lord of the Red Sands, the greatest gladiator that world had ever known. His rebels, his eaters of cities, his fellow enslaved gladiatorial combatants, they had been his family, and he was ripped from their side as they prepared to make their last stand against their enslavers. Angron's sorrow, combined with the biting and twitching of his butcher's nails, made him an erratic brute. As he was beaten to the ground, Kharn willed himself not to fight back. He was his Primarch, and he was an instrument of his will. Angron screamed at him to fight him, and as he prepared to end the captain of the 8th Company, he noticed something. Kharn was smiling. His pride in his brotherhood shone from the lips of the man on the edge of death. The Primarch's hesitation brought time for Kharn to speak. Kharn began to show Angron his warrior spirit, his strength of will, and Kharn listened to his father. He learned of his story, of his eaters of cities, and of his traditions. Kharn, bloodied and on the edge of death, still showed his indomitable will and devotion to his Primarch and to his Emperor, and this reached his bloodsire. You are warriors, Kharn. Such devotion from such warriors. It was Kharn that finally managed to bring the broken Primarch into the Legion. Carrying the wounded Kharn, Angron met with his Legion, accepting his role as Primarch. And as the roars filled the chamber, the Legion chanted a new name, birthed from the ashes of Nuceria. The Warhounds were dead. They were now the Eaters of Worlds.
All our strength, our will, has the power to shape worlds. Yet it is kept in check, restrained by our beliefs, our doubt. Everyone is made up by the events of their past, and it forms walls around one's spirit, or breaks such walls down. The mind makes some powerless and gives strength to others. Because we are not ready to give up our ties or codes, we surrender ourselves. We become slaves to teachings and belief. That is why belief will always rule you. To truly believe in an ideal, you must be willing to betray it, not to follow it so dogmatically. That is the lesson of strength.
Strength. Our inner will is powerful beyond measure, but it is the mental shackles we place upon ourselves that diminish strength. You know that sensation. When you push through your anxieties and fears, you feel like you are unstoppable, like nothing was out of grasp. You felt freedom. Kharn and the Warhounds had felt this too, having claimed this heritage of heart from men like Grunir. Kharn and the Warhounds were galactic conquerors, basking in the freedom of strength that they sourced from their brothers. But the mind makes some powerless. Kharn was the charismatic, brutal, but honourable Astarte, but for all his strength, he was weak when it came to his gene father. Following the ascension of Angron to the leadership of the newly consecrated World Eaters Legion, Kharn was named his equerry, his confidant. Kharn had shown his spirit to the Lord of the Red Sands, but many questioned the Primarch's choice. A Primarch's equerry was there to offer counsel to their Primarch, to offer new ways of thinking, and to be a balance to their nature. But Kharn was not his father's opposite. He was at times a mirror. Kharn would often simply be a supporter, never voicing his true opinions when it mattered. Kharn's jealousy of the other legions manifested as he kept trying to have the connections they had to their lords. He was jealous of the Eaters of Cities who had fought by his Primarch's side. He had brotherhood with the Legion, and he wanted it with Angron. Like all Primarchs before him, Angron began to shape the Legion into his own image. The Lord of the Red Sands was a true warrior, a gladiator, and the way the Legion fought disgusted him. Angron began to form Kharn and the World Eaters around the culture of his previous Nucerian Eaters of Cities. Gladiatorial pits were created within the holds of their ships. Legionaries would duel on the blood-soaked sands. He gave them the Triumph Rope, the tradition of scarring from the base of your spine around your torso. Clean scars for victories, black, dirt-filled scars for losses. He taught them to bind their weapons to their arms with chains. He showed them how he despised weakness. Kharn and his brothers embraced these new traditions, each one bringing them closer to a worthy warrior in their father's eyes. Warriors such as Skane, Mago, Maruk, and many others tied the rope. They fought on the sand. They used the chain and axe, abhorring the cowardice of ranged weapons. But even after all this, Angron still called them weak and abandoned them for 2 years, running to a distant feral world in search of a worthy death that would reunite him with his lost Eaters of Cities. It was Kharn who tracked him down, again using that innate charisma to bring his Primarch into the fold, telling him his fallen brothers and sisters would be ashamed with what he had become, that he could still fight. He could show his legion how to shed their weaknesses. The words reached through, and Angron agreed, but sometimes it is far too late to see the consequences of our own actions. To truly believe in an ideal, you must be willing to betray it, to not follow it so dogmatically. That is the lesson of strength. But Kharn was not willing to betray in his ideal of what Angron could be, nor betray the brotherhood he felt for his Primarch. Angron returns to the Legion to shed its weakness, but to him they didn't have that fury, that primal strength. They didn't have the nails. A warrior was only complete when he had the butcher's nails. The cybernetic implant that had been fused with the Primarch's brain as a child by his enslavers had caused him splitting headaches, pain, a dulling of any joy outside of adrenal-rushed combat. But yet, it turned Angron's rage into unstoppable primal fury, almost like a beast. Kharn and his brothers wanted to be worthy to their father, free from weakness, and so began the process of reverse engineering the nails, and the implementation begun. The bodies piled up. Volunteer after volunteer succumbed to a violent madness and died a horrific death. as Angron's orders of implanting crude copies of the Butcher's Nails failed. Many were disgusted with what the Legion was becoming, yet the Primarch's equerry was silent. But everything for the Legion changed upon the world of Gehenna. Angron's leadership had been a brutal reforging of the Legion. His disgust of weakness extended to the Legion's tactics as well. Where the Eaters of Worlds fought, the world had to be subjugated within 31 hours on penalty of decimation. 1 out of every 10 legionary will be beaten to death by his brothers and friends. On the world of Gehenna, the Legion engaged in a brutal conflict, and as they were about to break the world's final city, the 31st hour struck. Angron ordered the Legion back to their flagship to face decimation. Centurion Mago, a veteran of the Great Crusade and friend of Kharn, refused. Angron gave the order again, and when Mago again refused, Angron was sent into a blind rage that saw him murder swaths of his own sons. Only the World Eater's librarians were able to eventually subdue Angron by putting him into an unconscious state, though several died in the process. As the Legion argued what to do, news came from the apothecaries, news that would erupt the chaos into a war. Using technology gained from Gehenna, the apothecaries finally had a stable method of installing the Butcher's Nails throughout the Legion. The Legion split. Mago and others, horrified with the future this technology meant, attempted to destroy the Gehennan technology, only to find he was too late. Kharn had volunteered. Lying down again on that cold steel table, he was cut open. Part of his brain was taken away and replaced by the crude cyber augmetics. The pain was instant. A biting, sharp sensation stabbed at him. He felt dulled, but a cloud was inside his mind. He also felt angry, on the edge, like a ticking time bomb of fury. In your worst moments, you know that anger. The blood boiling heat rising within, your vision blurring, fists clenching, the hate. Kharn's Butcher's Nails only allowed the flow of dopamine and serotonin in that sliver of fury, making it the moment free of pain, making it addicting. 1,000 more brothers went through the process, and with this new force, they awakened their Primarch to confront Mago and his rebels. Mago pleaded with Kharn. They were brothers. This path they were taking was madness. They were conquerors, not butchers. But something in Kharn had changed. He was shedding his weakness. He was becoming closer to his father. His nails were biting in his head. Kharn slew Mago, ending the rebellion and bringing the others back into the fold. Kharn the Warhound had once held brotherhood above all else, but now he had just committed his first betrayal of it. His loyalty to Angron was drowned in blood. What would his friends think? What would Sigismund, Argyltal, and Loken think? For the next decades, the Legion cut a bloody swath across the galaxy. Kharn had shed his weakness, but what it had cost him was his brother's blood. Rather than be a moment for pause or reflection, the Ghenna Massacre became a trimming of the weakness within the Legion. A reverberation was sent through Kharn as a seeming line had been crossed. The legionaries began to become more depraved over the coming years as the Butcher's Nails were hammered into all of them. Blood drinking and vicious gladiatorial duels to the death emerged. The contest of old, a once joke told by Gruner in Kharn's youth, had become all too real, although he told himself He had to follow this path, to shed weakness, to perform his duty to his Primarch. But Kharn was no fool, as he finally saw the beginning of the decay of Brotherhood. Two centuries of near constant warfare and decades with the Butcher's Nails. Kharn was a veteran of the Great Crusade, a name spoken as one of the best combatants amongst the Legiones Astartes. Millions argued over the names of legend like Kharn, Sigismund, Sevatar and Abaddon. Many spoke highly of the charismatic figure that stood beside the infamous Angron. Even the War Master Horus had been so impressed, he even gifted him a kill counter display for his visor. The Centurion of the 8th Assault Company was a sight to behold on the battlefield, though you would notice the occasional twitch and flare of discomfort on his face. The World Eaters had built for themselves a reputation of butchery and violence so disgusting that even other Astartes of other legions found it stomach-churning. Kharn's friends, Argyltal, Garviel Loken, Sigismund, Jubal, and Nasir Amit, what would they say for the state the Legion was in now? The actions of the World Eaters had not gone unnoticed. Orders came directly from the Emperor for Angron to halt his implantation of the Butcher's Nails, but the Primarch ignored his so-called father. The 12th Legion's warpath had become so mind-numbingly brutal that astropathic choirs could hear the screams of worlds slain, the pain of billions reverberating within the warp. Eventually, the World Eaters found themselves confronted by Leman Russ and his Space Wolves. The brothers and legions were at a standoff. Kharn and his brothers stood before the Wolf King and felt that aura of majesty. This was a Primarch, and the sensation to kneel caught them all. Perhaps many wished their Primarch made them feel the same way. Russ told his brother to halt the surgeries. He was mutilating his sons, stealing their minds. But Angron didn't care. Who was he to morally grandstand after the things they had done? The Great Crusade conquers the galaxy, burning and butchering worlds who simply wanted to be left alone. Angron said in front of Kharn and his brothers that all he had left in this world was the joy of spilling blood, courtesy of his nails. The Emperor to him was a tyrant, and perhaps he should take the slaving bastard's head. No one ever saw who fired the first shot. In the decades after, the World Eaters claimed it came from the Space Wolves line, and the Space Wolves claimed the same of the 12th Legion. Without either Primarch giving an order, the two Space Marine legions fought. Kharn and the World Eaters' Butcher's Nails bit immediately, and they threw themselves at their brother legion, Kharn, slaying dozens of veterans. The Wolves' casualties were mounting, but in the rush of battle, they lost sight of their Primarch. Angron had dueled Russ and won, but was completely surrounded. Kharn and his brothers were so lost to the fury, all sense of loyalty and tactical strength evaporated. Kharn, Angron and the Legion had been shown its weakness. A Primarch who spent his sons' lives like coin had created a Legion with no loyalty. The Emperor needed a weapon that would never obey its own desires before those of the Imperium. He needed a weapon that would never bite the hand that feeds. The World Eaters were not that weapon. We've all drawn blades purely for the sake of shedding blood. And we've all felt the exaltation of winning a war that never needed to happen. We are not the tame. reliable pets the Emperor wanted. The wolves obey when we would not. The wolves can be trusted when we never could. They have a discipline we lack, because their passions are not aflame with the butcher's nails buzzing in the back of their skulls. The wolves will always come to heel when called. In that regard, it is a mystery why they name themselves wolves. They are tame, collared by the Emperor, obeying his whim. But a wolf does not behave that way, only a dog does. That is why we are the Eaters of Worlds, and the Warhounds no longer. Kharn had changed so much from Kharn the Warhound. You can imagine what he thought of himself now, in the wake of being shown the results of his Primarch's leadership. A cold ember that had been sparked decades ago began to grow. Kharn's resentment for what he was becoming. Chastised by the Emperor and his dog Leman Russ, Kharn and the Legion were in disarray. The captain of the 8th Assault Company had once stood proudly side by side with his brothers, giving their oaths to each other and their Emperor, the oath of moment. But that brotherhood was decaying. What stood now, after decades of Angron's leadership, was a disjointed band of murderers and butchers. Kharn had seen what his father was all those years ago. He was holding on to hope that he would change, that he would become like his brothers. But Angron was still the brutal, bitter, uncaring savage that came from the red sands of Nuceria. The Emperor knew what his Primarch was, and yet he didn't intervene. The Emperor heard the reports of the massacres and didn't intervene. He heard of the butcher's nails, but he only sent a chastising word from his throne on Terra. Kharn's legion was beginning to fall apart, but the Emperor didn't care, so long as the universe was conquered in his name. It was at this moment of vulnerability for the World Eaters that he came to them, Horus. Foul entities formed in the warp by the negative emotions of the sentient universe had corrupted the War Master, the Emperor's favourite son. The Primarch came to his brother Angron and whispered the words he had so desperately wanted to hear. The Emperor is a tyrant. He has enslaved you, brother. He let your eaters of cities die. Join me in cutting the slaving bastard's head off. A crescendo of resentment that had fermented for decades washed over Angron, and he pledged himself to Horus, to the traitor's side. Kharn had only one thing left to himself. The massacre at Gehenna had showed that, and that was loyalty to the Legion. You were either with him or against him. But there was a problem. Not all within the Legion would follow the path of a traitor. Within all the traitors' legions, there were those whose loyalty to the Emperor and the Imperium was greater than that to their own Primarch. In hushed whispers, a plan was constructed to purge themselves of this cancer, this weakness for the war to come. Perhaps Kharn felt conflicted. To have to kill brothers and friends again for his Primarch. But Kharn was not ready to give up his ties or codes. He had surrendered. He had become a slave to teaching and belief. That is why belief will always rule him. Belief in Angron. The sons of Horus, the Emperor's children, the Death Guard, and the World Eaters' legions assembled upon the non-compliant world of Istvan III. The legions drop-podded their way down to the surface, 1/3 of each legion barreling into the rebelling forces of Istvan. But something was wrong. The leadership of the ground forces received a distress signal from Captain Saul Tarvitz, a noble veteran of the 3rd Legion, telling them they were betrayed and were about to be bombarded by Horus and the Primarch's fleet. The world of Istvan III became encased in fire as billions of ordinary people burned by virus bombs. But to Horus's anger, most of the loyalists upon the surface had survived inside the world's fortified bunkers. Enraged, the 4 traitor legions launched their forces at their once comrades. Brothers fought brother in a symphony of hate, brutality and fire. Comrades who had spent decades by each other's side were at each other's throats. Kharn was inside the thick of it. Perhaps the Kharn of old would have never have betrayed a brother, but reason dies under the resentment of a forgotten veteran and the sting of the butcher's nails. The World Eaters, in spite of what Angron had done to them, they had the largest number of loyalists to the Emperor. They were the last true element of the Warhounds, the heritage of heart, the last weakness. Kharn again spilled the blood of brothers. Titanic forces clashed as thousands of butchers' nails sung. Kharn became a beast, covered in gore. Even his once friend Garviel Loken, on the side of the loyalists, was shocked by the sight of this mad, predatorial beast. I am the Eightfold Path. Words that Kharn began to scream as his mind was lost to rage and bloodlust. Kharn attacked his once friend, only to be thrown against the dozer blades of a nearby vehicle, impaling his chest. Blood poured from the titanic wounds, mixing with the gore of his once friends and brothers that stained his armor. And Kharn of the 8th Company faded from this world.
An Ashura's path. You are a sad creature that cannot live without fighting, and the shadows of hatred flicker within your eyes. And for what? For wealth, ego, anger, unprincipled nature, power? Always desiring to be superior to others, having no patience for your supposed inferiors, and belittling strangers, like a hawk flying high above and looking down on others. Without strength of purpose to guide you, you only fan the flames of hatred. You can see it, can't you? In your mind? You feel the warmth and heat of it. That beast that calls out for oblivion, pulling you further from your humanity, from your sense.
The flames of hatred flickered within the boy from Terra. As much as we all hate to admit, there is something deep within all of us, the capacity for true evil. When our humanity is lost, taken by acts of vileness and cruelty, all that can be left behind is the animal, the beast that lashes out, a creature of rage and hate. Kharn lay on the apothecary's table, with gashes and wounds so horrific it was a miracle that he was not dead. Kharn clawed his way back to life, healing his wounds as the Horus Heresy had truly begun. His brothers and Primarch finally let the Imperium see what they had become. During the infamous Isfahan V massacre, the Raven Guard, Iron Hands, and Salamander's legions had all been annihilated in a clash of legionary versus legionary. 9 traitor legions began their brutal campaign across the stars, all heading towards Terra. The moment Angron was given mastery over us, we stopped being what the Emperor wanted, and became what our father wanted instead. How could he have not foreseen the madness to come when it was he who made it happen? Or did he even care? So long as we spilt the blood that he needed spilled to expand his realm. If you desire to cast fault for the path that the 12th Legion embarked upon, the true blame could be placed nowhere other than that at the throne of Terra and at his feet. Kharn and his brothers chose the Legion. His brothers, Those who chose the Primarch's path were who he fought for. In the early days of the heresy, Kharn and a squadron of World Eaters were later dispatched to the ruins of Prospero to retrieve the Moonwolf, a psychic communicator that once belonged to Horus. But Kharn had come for another reason, to locate a mind-healing device of the Thousand Suns, a way to save his brothers from the effects of the Butcher's nails. Captain Calliston, a survivor of the fall of Prospero, told him that the device was destroyed, but offered to use his psychic powers to heal Kharn's mind. He had hope, but to heal his mind, after all that he had done, he didn't deserve it. His anger began to rise, perhaps feeling a sense of cosmic injustice that he was offered salvation. And then his nails began to bite. The headache grew into a stinging, and his blood began to boil. The flames of hatred rose as Kharn once again became lost to the nails, decrying himself as beyond saving. Kharn rebuked Calliston's offer, and after a brief struggle, he beat the Thousand Suns captain to death with his bare hands. As Castilion faded from this world, he saw the mad beast, and he saw glimpses of what he would become when he was finally unleashed from the chains of others. He saw something dark, filled with hate and rage, was watching him. Having destroyed the only salvation for his brothers, immense guilt overcame Kharn when the sting of the nails wore down. His own guilt had manifested and had destroyed their hope. Returning to his legion's side, all Kharn could do now was hold on to the things he still valued in this world. As the heresy progressed, the World Eaters burned their way across the galaxy, drowning the worlds loyal to the Emperor in blood. As his own legion's ties to one another decayed, Kharn still had one brother who kept him tethered, Argel Tal, the Crimson Lord, Astarte of the Word-Bearers, and now the leader of the Vakra Jar. Argel Tal had been Kharn's friend for centuries, bonding over their duels during the Great Crusade. They were both very different back then. They both had changed so much, but their bond of friendship kept them both tied to their humanity. Despite what they had suffered, they were even brothers in rebellion, a path that would be ever increasingly difficult in the battles to come.
Creature,
The Primarch said a third time, smiling now. He enjoyed the way the insult tasted.
Yes, sire.
I saw your lord's pretty warships lighting up the skies just now. The Trisagion and the Blessed Lady reaving their way through Armatura's defenses. We owed this assault to them, eh?
Argel Tal betrayed no response, merely waiting impassively, his silver faceplate staring with its crystal blue eye lenses. Kharn willed him to silence, to manage his composure. His brother may have been a bearer of the word, but Argel Tal had a 12th Legion's temper. Angron's teeth clacked together again, in sympathy with another facial tick.
The Blessed Lady,
he said.
That name. She was your whore priestess, was she not?
She was our confessor.
The word-bearer's armor joints gave a low thrum as he tilted his head and bunched his muscles. Angron didn't miss the telltale signs of rising aggression. He broke into a grin.
Dead, though, eh? Entombed on Lorgar's flagship. Is that the same shrine, or have you poor zealots been praying to more than one dead girl?
A hesitation this time. Argel Tal took a slow breath.
It is her.
Is it true that fanatics pulled her bones from the coffin? They stole them as holy relics, like the heathens of old?
Kharn watched Argel Tal's fingers flinch and curl.
It is true,
The word-bearer replied.
Angron,
Kharn warned his father. Angron ignored him, as Kharn had known the Primarch would. He was enjoying himself too much to heed any advice. Kharn shook his head. Here it comes. Angron's chuckle had all the charm and warmth of an avalanche.
This is the same whore priestess you failed to protect in life. Now you can't even guard her bones from human thieves. Lorgar must love you, creature. Why else would he stomach your failures?
The word-bearer spoke through clenched teeth.
If my Lord Lorgar finds fault with my service, he is free to offer punishment.
He was turning away now, regardless of the disrespect he offered. Angron baiting him was an old game, though this time it risked going further than ever before.
And you, Broken One, are not fit to speak of the Blessed Lady.
Angron's laugh was a wet landslide.
Did you ever recover her bones, creature? Or are they still in the hands of your unwashed cultist slaves?
He is no Primarch,
came Argyltal's voice in Kharn's mind. The Centurion's first instinct was to shudder. The nails bit harder, hotter in the wake of the psychic whisper. They hurt more every time. Kharn looked back to his brother, where Argyltal was directing his own men into their gunships and drop pods.
He is my Primarch,
Kharn replied, with no idea if Argyltal could hear him. Sometimes the silent speech worked, sometimes it didn't.
A Primarch should be inspiring. Our genetics should react to the mere sight of them. Think of the moments you laid eyes on Horus, Dawn, or Magnus. I've seen Sanguinius and Rust with my own eyes as well. The awe and reverence that beats through your blood, the feeling of our genetic coding reacting to the pinnacle of the human process. I've never felt that instinctive respect for Angron Khan. Not once. He is a broken thing. Devastating, unrivaled in war, but broken.
Kharn didn't answer, because there was nothing to say. He boarded his drop pod, ascending the ramp, and waited for the robed Legion slave to secure his restraint harness.
You feel it,
Argyltal said.
You feel it too.
In psychic silence, Kharn confessed something he'd never said outside his Legion.
Yes, we feel the same. The World Eaters, each and every one of us knows what you do.
Why do you tolerate it?
What can we do? Murder our own father? Did you destroy Lorgar when he led you into worshipping the Emperor? Or did you tolerate him in patience, hoping that eventually he'd find his way to equaling his brothers?
A pause. A long, long pause. Kharn took it as Argyltal's capitulation and pushed on.
It's our shame to bear before the other legions, brother. Angron was broken long before he ever reached us. Why do you think we let him beat the nails into our heads? We hoped that by breaking ourselves on the same anvil, we'd finally feel unity with our father.
There was nothing of mockery in the word-bearer's reply, only sympathy. Kharn's skin crawled. He'd have preferred mockery.
It didn't work.
The Imperium burns. The Horus Heresy has raged for years. The World Eaters and Word-Bearers burn their way across the realm of Ultramar, the domain of the Primarch Rabute Guilliman. The very sight of the World Eaters' Legion brought terror and dread to the worlds of the Imperium. Their cohesion was almost completely lost. Angron choosing to attack worlds not for strategic value, but just so he could unleash his bloodlust and alleviate his butcher's nails. Lorgar, Angron's brother, was barely able to rein in this ravenous legion. It was during the Shadow Crusade in Ultramar. Argyltal and his new chapter, the Vakrar Jar, was assigned to the World Eater's flagship, the Conqueror. The World Eaters Legion had no love for their more scholarly religious brothers, but Kharn had the bond of brotherhood with Argol Tal. Kharn shared the Legion's traditions with them, fighting on the red sands inside the gladiatorial pits, warriors tying themselves together in contests of teamwork and skill. The two came from vastly different worlds and operated within legions of vastly different cultures, but friendship cut through all those barriers. This fragile alliance was held up by the bond between these two, able to keep their brothers in line when they overstepped. Argol Tal's time with the World Eaters was not entirely pleasant, as Angron, the unashamed beast that he was, enjoys toying with the Crimson Lord, taunting him with his friend's death, his confessor Cyrene. Angron's condition had become worse at the latter parts of the Great Crusade. Kharn had suspected that the nails were killing him slowly, but now in the fires of the heresy, he was either a raging beast or an uncaring tyrant. He is no Primarch. Argol Tal was right. Their genetics should react at the mere sight of them. Kharn had felt the aura of majesty with the other Primarchs, but not with his own father. He had killed brothers for him. He had the nails put in his skull, hoping that by breaking himself upon the same anvil, he would finally feel unity with his father. But it didn't work. Kharn had done so much evil for his father, and it didn't work. And now he knew in his heart he wasn't worthy of salvation. He deserved the nails. Only with Argol Tal could he express a truth that he had never dared to say to anyone else. But another truth began to coalesce with the time he spent with his brother. There was more to this rebellion than just the tyranny of the Emperor. The World Eaters were fighting for revenge, but the Word-Bearers were fighting for something much darker. Chaos. Dark gods residing within the warp were at the heart of this rebellion. The Legion first saw the influence of these beings upon the killing fields of Istvan V. Argol Tal and his Galfor back had transformed into monstrous creatures with jutting bone, claws and hulking figures. Demons had possessed their bodies. Demons were real, and it made Kharn's skin crawl, knowing that a creature born of that realm of madness, the warp, also resided within the body of his friend, Argol Tal. The heathen rituals he saw in the 17th Legion disgusted him. For a man who was raised on the atheistic ideals of the Imperial truth, it was abhorrent, and it confused him. The use of human sacrifice and torture. It was murder, not war. At least war had some honor to it, though that didn't mean much, coming from the man who had butchered countless innocents when the nails took over. Kharn and Argol Tal were deployed to the world of Armatura, within the realm of Ultramar. Dozens of worlds had been massacred in the wake of Lorgar and Angron, and more were to come. Armatura was a bastion of Guilliman's realm, and the upcoming fight was going to be hard. It was only when the traitors landed upon the surface that they begun to show their transformation and what it had cost them. The slow, dark ritual parade of the Word-Bearers and the undisciplined horde of the World Eaters versus the disciplined Ultramarines. Kharn could see it, his men losing cohesion and suffering enormous casualties. He often lost himself to the nails, only to return to sanity hours later, miles away from his brothers and covered in gore. As he wandered through the rubble and dust of a world on fire, he found his brother Garte, mortally wounded. With his dying breath, he told Kharn, "The nails are aflame, even now. How can that be? I am dying, and they still sing. What more do they want from me?" A revelation that struck at the heart of Kharn. Kharn offered his brother a soldier's death, hearing words he'd wish not to hear. Piss on Angron's grave when he finally lies dead. Armatura burned. Kharn and the traitorous forces cleaved their way across the world, showing no heed as they flung themselves upon the iron-disciplined lines of the Ultramarines' garrison, hoping rage and axe would do. Sometimes the bite of the nails became so great that the World Eaters would attack each other when they ran out of enemies. The battle had been a bloody mess, with high casualties on both sides. But Kharn and Argel Tal had survived, having fought side by side near the closing of the conflict. In the aftermath of the battle, Kharn found the discarded weapon of his Primarch, Gorechild. Seeing the size and strength of this enormous chain axe, he claimed it. He was drawn to it. He knew he risked his Primarch's wrath by violating Angron's superstition of inherited weapons bringing ill luck, a gladiatorial myth taken from the red sands of Nuceria. Kharn ignored his battle brother's protests and gave the discarded weapon to the Dark Mechanicum detachment attached to the 12th Legion's fleet, and ordered the senior Magi to restore the weapon to its former glory. A simple claim of a finely crafted weapon, or a subconscious way to tie himself closer to his father. Each battle in the rebellion had become more bloody for Kharn. He had soaked worlds in blood, but it had always been either for the love of war and conquest, or because the maddening rage of the butcher's nails had taken over. But this Asura's path he walked was watched. This chaos became more to the forefront of Kharn's mind over the Shadow Crusade. Even witnessing Erebus, the first chaplain of the Wordbearers, resurrect Argel Tal's friend, Cyrene the Confessor, in a dark ritual. Witnessing the blood-curdling screams and the unholy dark tongue of gods of the warp. It disgusted him, but yet a part of him was intrigued. The first chaplain Erebus of the Wordbearers, the Dark Apostle, had power that even Kharn, with all he had seen, could not rationalize. Argel Tal told him that this primordial truth, this pantheon of dark gods, was the truth, and they had to face it, because they couldn't live a lie. The Emperor's lies. Perhaps the idea of this disgusting faith being the truth of the universe unnerved him. He had turned from the Emperor's side because he was an uncaring tyrant who clearly hid things from them. But was this truth worth knowing? We can all think to a time in our own lives where our naivety was a blessing in the face of truth. Though the flames of hatred had flickered within Kharn, Argel Tal's friendship kept them at bay, both men wishing to see their brother survive this war, and fearing losing their friend. So when the words came from Erebus, that Kharn is destined to die on a world with grey skies, the Crimson Lord's fears bubbled to the surface. The two traitor legions in the ashes of Armatura moved on to their next target. Angron was dying. The nails had been killing him for decades, and Lorgar, Primarch of the Wordbearers, had promised Kharn there was a way to save his father. Even as a recruit, all Kharn wanted was his Gene Father's acceptance, waiting in patience, enduring more than most could tolerate. And now there was a possibility for that dream. The traitors headed for Nuceria, Angron's homeworld. As the traitor forces arrived, the world burned under the fury of the traitors. But they were soon counterattacked by Rabute Gilliman and his Ultramarines, seeking revenge for what the traitors had done to his realm. Kharn and Argel Tal fought side by side, the Berserker and the demonically possessed man. Argel Tal clung to Kharn as the titanic battle raged on. They put their lives on the line for each other, despite Kharn losing himself to the nails many times. Argottal even had to fend off Kharn himself. The fear of Erebus's prophecy had made Argottal fear for his brother's life, leaving his body a wreck after hours of grueling conflict. Thousands lay dead, but Kharn had survived, and as Argottal gazed off into the world's orange skies, his mentor Erebus approached, congratulating him for saving his brother. And as the Dark Apostle drove the blade through his back, the demon inside him screamed, and Kharn's last friend in the galaxy faded from this world.
Bold, Kharn. Are you sure?
Gorechild revved for the first time since his rebirth, eating the air with the throaty snarl of an apex predator. That interruption was the only answer Kharn would give, and Erebus raised his Crozius in reply.
Come then.
3 blows. The first, Kharn smashed the maul aside with the flat of his new axe. The second, he cannoned a headbutt into Erebus's nose, breaking cartilage with a wet crunch. The third, Gorechild tasted first blood, ripping across the chaplain's chest, carving a canyon of flesh over the dense subdermal armor of the warrior's back carapace torso implant. All of this had happened in the time it took Erebus to blink. No one could move as fast as Kharn moved, no one human, and nothing mortal. The chaplain threw himself backwards, Crozius up high to guard. Kharn walked forwards, gunning Gorechild's trigger. The crowd was silent now. This was a Kharn they had never seen, not even on the field of battle. Another 3 blows, delivered with the same blinding speed. Erebus's maul clanked skidded across the deck. He took a fist to the throat and a boot to the stomach, knocking him back with enough force to send him crashing onto the blood-stained iron grillwork. He looked up at Kharn from the ground and saw his death in the World Eater's eyes. He had never seen this before, not in any of the paths of possibility. It couldn't be happening. It couldn't end like this. He was Destiny's hand. Kharn looked down at him, clearly allowing time for the chaplain to recover his Crozius.
Get up.
Erebus rose, his mace in his hands. He attacked this time, showing him the speed and skill that had allowed him to hold his own against Lucius of the Emperor's Children and Loken of the old Lunar Wolves. His Crozius trailed, killing lightning, buzzing furiously as it thrummed through the empty air again and again. Kharn weaved aside from every blow, quicker than a blink, surely quicker than muscles could ever allow. Their weapons clashed together. Kharn had parried the last blow. Erebus expected accusation in the World Eater's eyes, or surely anger. He saw neither. Worse, he saw bored indulgence. The captain even sighed. 3 more blows. Erebus was on the deck before he even knew how. Pain flared across his chest, hot and urgent, matching the thick throb of his smashed face. He reached to the wound with a hand that was no longer there. His hand was on the deck, several meters away. Blood leaked from the chewed veins nestled in the meat of his severed limb, turning unbelieving eyes downwards. He saw where his arm now ended at the wrist. Going to need an augmetic for that, Kargos said from the crowd. Several warriors laughed, but few with any relish. They were too fascinated with what was unfolding. Erebus looked up at Kharn again. He was just waiting.
Get up!
The chaplain rose. Kharn didn't wait this time. The blows were bloody blurs of whining motor and tearing chain teeth. Pain bloomed across Erebus's body, and he was face down on the deck again before he managed to fully rise from the last time. Even without his armor's pain nullifiers and chemical stimulants, Erebus has suppressed the pain by whisper chanting a sacred mandala. Kharn interrupted it.
Get up!
Erebus actually tried, but he froze in place when he felt Gorchild's teeth across his spine. The idling chain blade was purring and breathing out its Promethean fuel stink. The axe's steel teeth kissing Erebus's vertebrae. Never, not even in fragmentary glimpses, had he foreseen this duel. It couldn't end like this. He couldn't die here. There was so much to do. Cygnus Prime, Terra herself. In all the 10,000 futures, Erebus had seen himself fighting the long war to the very last. The very same second Erebus reached to the ritual knife at his belt. With his remaining hand, Kharn pulled the chain axe's trigger. There should have been a scream. Everyone expected it. Every warrior present waited to hear the first chaplain of the Word-Bearer's shriek as Gorchild bit into his flesh. But there was nothing beyond the rotating whine of an axe blade chewing empty air. No one seemed surprised at the display of the Word-Bearer's sorcery. Even fewer were surprised at the cowardice. Kharn turned from the bloody marking on the deck, leaving the circle without a word. He murdered him. In the ashes of Nuceria, Erebus murdered Argyle, stabbing him in the back, and Kharn wasn't there to save him. He had been distracted by the horrifying events that had gripped his Primarch. Angron had been locked within a fierce duel with his brother Rabute Guilliman, falling even further into the madness of the Butcher's nails, his mind screaming with rage and pain. He truly was dying. At the moment of Angron's victory over his brother, Lorgar used this opportunity and began a chaos ritual, using Angron's rage as a conduit and the power of the sacrifices taken over the Shadow Crusade. Lorgar channeled the power of chaos directly into his brother, swelling him with dark power. Angron's form exploded in a storm of dark energy and blood. What emerged from the epicenter of hate was a massive, hulking creature with crimson skin, large wings, rows of jagged teeth, bulging muscles, cloven feet and claws. He was covered in smoking, dripping gore. Kharn and the World Eaters stood in shock as their father had been turned into a demonic beast. Imagine putting yourself there before this demonic creature towering over you. The smell of iron in the air as blood dripped from its form. The fear and intimidation that would grip you. Kharn had seen his father die, only to be replaced by this living nightmare. Following the events on Nuceria, Kharn and the Legion locked their Primarch within the deepest bowels of their flagship, though no prison could ever hold him for long. Lorgar had told Kharn once that he would save his father, and he had. The Butcher's nails wouldn't kill him anymore, but was this any better? Kharn hated Lorgar. This was no salvation. At the moment of pure anguish, Lorgar asked him, "Would you like to know who killed Argyle?" His last friend in the universe was dead. His tether to his humanity had shattered. Erebus killed his friend. The hatred bubbled within. This was no sting of the nails. This was the man, Kharn. His fury, his hate. You can imagine it. The anger of when a friend, a brother, is taken from you and you were not ready. When you didn't even have the chance to say goodbye. You didn't even have the chance to be there to help. Kharn strode to the fighting pits inside the Legion's flagship and challenged Erebus in a duel to the death. Sanguinis extremis. Erebus was confident, but all of that drained away as Kharn struck with a reforged Gorechild, a chain axe that was so immensely heavy it should have taken 2 hands to wield it. The cheering crowd turned to hushed silence as Kharn seemed to move with a speed and strength they had never seen before. Erebus had murdered Argyle because his friendship kept Kharn tied to his humanity. Erebus saw that this would prevent Kharn's destiny, the path that led to the dark gods of chaos, an eightfold path, an Ashura's path. Before he could finish him, Erebus teleported himself away like the coward he was. Kharn had been transformed. He was something deadlier, more of the beast and less of the man. Following his duel, he made his way to the deepest bowels of the Legion's flagship, to his Primarch. He found the hulking demonic beast. Angron was a mewling creature now, scattered amongst corpses, bouncing between moments of forgetfulness and seething rage. Kharn thought that the Primarch probably did not even recognize the creature he saw reflected in the pools of blood, lying at his feet. It wounded Kharn to see his father suffer like this, suffering what Lorgar had done to him. Even now, Kharn didn't want to lose him. The price for Angron's salvation, his immortality, chilled him to the core. Angron was inconsolable. This is not freedom. It is slavery, he cried out. Kneeling in front of the monster that was his Primarch, Angron ordered Kharn to bring him the slaves from the lower decks, and he told him to build him a throne of skulls. And then Angron uttered the words that would haunt Kharn for the rest of his life. Blood. Blood for the blood god. Blood for my lord Khorne. Skulls for the skull throne. Something was watching him. Kharn felt its eye upon him. The same sleepless and unwavering eye that had watched his father all his life, he now suspected. His nails were stinging constantly. His headaches never went away, and he felt himself falling. He would black out, only to awaken hours later, finding himself covered in gore and surrounded by corpses. He was in constant pain, the eightfold heat washing through the base of his skull. Kharn's brothers, if they could still be called that, were no better. Rampages and slaughter became commonplace amongst the Legion's fleet. The very ships themselves flowed with rivers of blood. Any water had long since gone, and after a while, you got used to the taste of iron down your throat. Kharn finally understood now that he was damaged. Would that I were judged for my atrocities. I could answer those in a heartbeat, and spit upon any who would say that the legionary's rightful role is not that of an attack dog. Rather, I know I am to be condemned for whatever vestige of mercy and sane thought I can still muster when the killing is done and the butcher's nails are sated. Such things as mercy and sanity are of no interest to whatever it is that lurks beyond. Khorne, the god of war, rage, blood, and martial honor, strength and murder, had seen the equerry of Angron, watching him his whole life, seeing the mountains of corpses, the slaughter, the prowess of this boy from Terra. Surviving the impalement at Istvan III, he thought he had survived out of sheer will, or had something else been there in his time of need. The flames of hatred, the beast that calls out for oblivion, pulling you further from your humanity, from your sense. It was an Ashura's path, an eightfold path, that led to Kharn. Kharn and the Legion lost all sense of direction. As Horus's rebellion progressed, the 12th Legion simply went from planet to planet in search of victims for their rampaging Primarch and his Berserker Legion. They needed blood for the Blood God. Years of undirected slaughter ravaged the worlds of the Imperium until the moment came. Horus was ready to assault Terra, ready to take the head of the Emperor in the name of the Dark Gods. Horus dispatched Perturabo and his Iron Warriors to bring Angron and his legion to muster upon the world of Ullanor before the Siege of Terra could begin. Perturabo found the 12th rampaging on the world of Deluge. Perturabo's iron-disciplined warriors headed down to the surface, establishing a defensive line upon a hill surrounded by a thick mist. A single man emerged from the fog. He was twitching and covered in blood. Kharn. With seemingly all his strength, Kharn was holding back the rage. He spoke to them. He begged them to leave before it was too late. But then the demon Angron and his Berserker Legion charged at them. A bloody battle ensued. But just like the Night of the Wolf, Angron became separated from his legion. He was beaten into submission by Perturabo and his Iron Warriors. Restrained and refocused, the 12th Legion were dragged to the muster at Ullanor and joined the traitors. Now, the Siege of Terra could begin. The war had been long, and Kharn was very different from the boy who had left Terra 2 centuries before. Now he returned, a traitor. What began was the most brutal battle in humanity's history. Billions of lives would be lost in the titanic clashes of ordinary to superhuman warriors. As the 12th Legion approached Terra, Angron's rages threatened their flagship, and so it was Kharn who was sent to calm his father. But as he entered the corpse-filled chamber, he was set upon by the raging Primarch. Almost a recreation of their first meeting, Kharn was thrown around and beaten, and with a voice, half twisted by a beast jaw and half growl, the Primarch revealed he knew the 8th Captain's ultimate destiny, and wished to supplant him as the chosen of Kharn. Before Angron could finish him, Kharn placed a teleporter on the Primarch, which transported him to the shifting maze within the nearby Night Lord's flagship, Nightfall. His father almost killed him. His ties to his humanity fully snapped. His nails were biting with unbearable pain. The heritage of heart that he loved with the warhounds was gone. The 8-fold path. His father's path had disgusted him once. The price for immortality. It is such a heavy thing to carry hate in your heart. It's like a poison. But what else did he have in this universe? Above the place of his birth, after decades, with nothing left except the joy of war, Kharn fell, pledging himself to his father's new master. Blood for the Blood God. Skulls for the Skull Throne.
The Archmagos reforged Gorechild. Now, he has reforged me. I will wear the red, the brass, the bronze, fresh from the armory and turned by my own hand, though I am no devourer. I spit on Taruga and all the rest. Our Primarch is a newborn creature of the warp, a prince of blood. He needs no protection that legionaries can offer. Rather, I am sanctified in the colors that are said to most please our new god. But I will not lose myself. Many of my brothers have followed my example, even as they follow me now on the field of war. The brain fire keeps our blood hot. With every swing of our blades, we anoint the icy ground before us. We will walk the eightfold path. We will wear the mantle of the Caeda Remisum, even though the Primarch forbade it. We will rebel, just as he rebelled. We will kill not because we are ordered to, but because we live for it. Blood and pain and nothing more. This last edition is the purest form of worship I can imagine, glowing bright and crimson in the corner of my visor display. It is a calming counterpoint to the nail's fierce tick, tick, tick. Val Keradan knows me well indeed. A tally, a measure of my skill and a tether for my soul. The others may do as they wish, but I will not lose myself. I will not become like our Primarch. This is no brotherly contest of old. These are my offerings to the Blood God. By the count of their skulls will I prove my worth, for they are all I have to offer in place of my own, before each new battle's ending. Tekeli, Horgan Prime, Dobrosk, and all three of its moons. Stener, the orbital cities over Palyax. Another world whose name I forget. Nebe 6, Nebe 2, Deluge, and so on to the hallowed throne world itself. I am not.
But now Kharn saw the circle complete. He saw what 7 years of total war had done to the Imperium. He saw what its warriors had been turned into. He had a vision. Even then, in the midst of the most strenuous and lung-bursting fighting he had ever experienced, of thousands of warriors in this very mold, marching out from fortresses of unremitting bleakness, every one of them as unyielding and soul-dead and fanatical as this one, never giving up. Not because of any positive cause in which they believed, but because they had literally forgotten how to cede ground. And he saw then how powerful that could be, and how long it would last, and what fresh miseries it would bring to a galaxy already reeling under the hammer of anguish without limits. And then even Kharn the Faithful, shuddered to his core.
I am not.
He fought on, not out of wild desperation, because this could not be allowed to go unopposed. This could not be countenanced. There was still pleasure, there was still heat, and honor, and the relish of a kill well made, but it would all be drowned by this cold flood if not staunched here, on Terra, where their kind had first been made, where the great spectacle of hubris had been kicked off. He had to stand. He had to resist, for humanity, for a life lived with passion, for the glorious pulse of pain, of sensation, of something.
I am not.
He panted, his vision going now, his hands losing their grip.
As damaged.
The black sword came at him, again and again. It was impossible. This way of fighting, too perfect, too uncompromising, without a thread of pity, without a kernel of remorse. He never even saw the killing strike. The sword edge hurled at him, with all the weight of emptiness, the speed of eternity, so magnificent in its nihilism, that even the great god within him could only watch it come. Thus was Kharn cut down. He was dispatched in silence, cast to the earth with a frigid disdain, hacked and stamped down into the ashes of civilization, his throat crushed, his skull broken and chest caved in. He was fighting even as his limbs were cut into bloody stumps, even as the reactor in his warp-thrumming armor died out, raging and thrashing to the very end. But by then, that was not enough. The last thing he saw, on that world at least, was the great dark profile of his slayer, the Black Templar, turning his immaculate blade tip down and making ready to end the last bout the two of them would ever fight.
Not as damaged,
gasped Kharn, in an agony greater than anything the nails could have ever given him, but with more awareness of lucid cruelty of the universe than he had ever possessed before.
as you.
And then the sword fell, and his god left him, dead amid the ruins of his ancient home. Terra burned. Titanic armies clashed in battles that truly encompassed the word apocalyptic. The black skies were choked with ash and pollution, ensuring near total night permanently. The world had been changed forever. Kharn had taken a series of small steps down a path of corruption over centuries. It is only when you look back that you realize how far he had fallen. He had pledged himself to the Eightfold Path, to Kharn, following in his father's footsteps. Dark power swelled within him. Kharn was already amongst the deadliest warriors across the Imperium, but now he was more. His strength grew exponentially. Kharn, even before the nails, enjoyed battle, but with chaos pulsing through his veins, he loved it. The euphoria of slaughter, of proving his strength was greater, feeling the warm blood splash on his skin. He knew deep down that he was broken. He had promised not to lose himself, but those words were hollow, and the power he had gained was incredible. The mind makes some powerless, and gives strength to others. But this was not his strength. It was someone else's power. Kharn joined the ground assault upon the throne world. In the battle for the Lion's Gate spaceport, thousands of warriors clashed. Previous friends and veterans killed each other in the grind of war. Kharn and the World Eaters flung themselves upon the defending Imperial fists. Kharn personally cleaving down dozens of Dawn's finest sons. The raving berserkers were lost to the nails and penetrated deep into the loyalist lines until he was confronted by Sigismund, his once friend. His once friend must have been shocked by what had become of the once noble, charismatic Kharn of the Great Crusade. How far had he fallen? The two once brothers of war launched themselves at each other. Sigismund's martial skill was incredible, something they had bonded over in the countless duels they had fought over the years. But with the strength of a dark god pumping through him, Kharn began to overpower Dawn's champion. It was like defending against tank shells, as Gorechild battered Sigismund's defenses. Kharn was moments away from delivering the death blow, but Sigismund was saved thanks to Rogel Dawn, who smashed him off the walls. Kharn survived, much to the delight of his patron god. The Siege of Terra progressed for the traitors. Months of endless battles for every inch of ground. Humanity was fighting for its very existence, and the fight had devolved into a disorganized mess as bands of chaos-corrupted traitors roamed the rubble and ruins of the once jewel of the Imperium. Kharn found himself blacking out, awakening days or even weeks later from the rampage of the nails. He had truly become a beast, simply roaming for prey, though he was enjoying himself. A man with no humanity had no capacity for regret or mercy. Kharn and the traitors closed in on the Imperium's innermost sanctums. The World Eaters and Kharn was simply a roaming rabble. Like packs, they swept through the streets, seeking out any skulls they could offer to the Skull Throne. After months of unending victories, he was once again confronted by Sigismund, now adorned in black armor, wielding an equally dark sword. The two legends clashed again, chain axe grinding against the black steel, the mad, corrupted Kharn against the calm Emperor's champion. The two tapped into the world of unspoken understanding that lies within combat, revealing the inner core of each warrior. But something was wrong. Kharn was a blazing hot fury. He was the flames of hatred, but he felt nothing from Sigismund. He was empty. As the legendary figures clashed amongst the blood, fire and smoke, they were even. How could this be? Kharn had surrendered himself to Khorne for his father, to have power like his father. He had damaged himself for power, but Sigismund matched him. Even with his dark god flooding power into his veins, he started to be pushed back. Sigismund was cold, uncaring, a razor-sharpened thing, and Kharn knew now he was fighting this affront to humanity. He now knew Sigismund had been damaged more than him. Even with his dark god screaming through him, Kharn was powerless, and his once friend plunged the black sword through his chest. The boy from Terra faded from this world, dying upon the sands, with not a single person to mourn his loss. Pity the man with nothing to love or be loved. Kharn died, a hollow shell of the man he had once been, but the blood god was not done with him yet. The flamer is bulky and unfamiliar in my grip, and far heavier than my holstered pistol. Half-remembered rote training guides my hand. Open the reservoir, adjust the ignition angle, thumb the safety and squeeze the trigger. From within, there are more screams, and the reports of unspent bolt rounds detonating in their magazines. The heat of the flame drives steam from the frozen earth all around. Movement. The crash of an unarmored body falling to the ground. Footfalls. Frantic. Hefting the flamer in my off hand, I swing Gorechild in a wide arc. My timing is perfect. The shrieking teeth of the chain axe greet the burning man in the instant that he emerges from the archway, cleaving through armored gorget, meat and bone. His head strikes the floor before he would have registered the fresh pain of the blow. The tally reading in my visor scores the kill, 1,302. A small red skull icon flashes next to it. As the telemeter transmits the location, I do not know who receives the data. All I know is that my kills are always waiting for me when I return. Fresh skulls, jumbled into heaps at my arming post. None shall surpass my count this day. The main causeway is tremendous underfoot. The blood which before had run freely upon the flagstones, now freezing in the plummeting temperatures of the Scalathrax night. Horphos rhymes the armour of the fallen, marked with the darker patches of cinnabar where Gorechild had done his work. True enough, I have never known cold like it. Not the deep cold of the tundra on Gedron 5, nor the icy gales that scorned the mountain passes on Tekeli. This is a cold which burns and bites, a cold which threatens to steal away the fire inside. But not from me. Victory or death. The sons of Angron will never again know defeat. I will not allow it. Our foes will fall, or we will offer ourselves to Khorne in their stead. To the west, the kneeing of another sonic attack echoes in the darkness. My boots skid upon the loose debris as I double backwards towards the sound, the rage building within me once more. Fulgrim may have forsaken them, but his bastard children shall pay the price, for it too late. I spot the ambush. Time slows. The shadows around me erupt in a blaze of bolter fire, shells detonating and peppering the flesh off my bare arm with shrapnel. In the millisecond before I leap, I count 3 shooters and another concealed figure. My pistol is in my hand before I leave the ground, and a burst of incandescent plasma vaporizes the head of the nearest attacker. Momentary regret over the loss of the skull. 1303. A stray bolt strikes my breastplate, sending my leap wide and forcing me to dispatch the concealed warrior. With an improvised backhand strike, I whirl around to cleave through the bolt gun of the third before slamming him insensibly to the floor and hurling Gorechild to the left. The chain axe bites deep into the throats of the last legionary, and arterial blood strikes the vaulted roof of the arcade. 1305. The rage fades. I stand over the prone warrior as he scrabbles to find a weapon. Words. Anger. His face is familiar to me. Gruner. Backed into a corner amongst the bodies of our fallen brethren, he speaks of madness and of betrayal. He curses me. The berserker champion who will strike down his own legionary once more.
Whelp, master. Who are you to doubt me? I was the first to stand upon the walls of the Imperial Palace. I was the last to be borne away from Terra, my body broken by the slaying of 1 million of the Emperor's lackeys through the breach at Lion's Gate. None shall ever surpass my count. The contest is over. I won. The weakness of others is the reason we were defeated. Weakness in the other legions and our own. If this is all that remains of the honor of the World Eaters, then I am glad to be called their betrayer.
Kharn died upon Terra, the boy who had given up a normal life to sail the stars and conquer the galaxy for the Imperium of mankind. He endured the pain of the surgeon's knife, transforming into a superhuman, altered in body and mind. As a young neophyte, he trained under Gruner, who taught him the heritage of heart of his new home, the Warhounds Legion. The contest, the first one to reach 1,000 skulls, wins. A brutal legion's pledge to the galaxy. They knew what they were. They were conquerors who enjoyed the strength and brotherhood of war. They swore oaths to the Emperor and each other, an oath of moment. Kharn had grown into a deadly warrior who flourished under the Legion's teachings and was admired by all, especially for his easy, straightforward nature. How could you not respect this charismatic figure? Kharn loved his legion and the brotherhood he shared with them, and this very pride saved his life when he came face to face with his Primarch. Beaten and on the edge of death, the broken Primarch Angron was about to kill him, but Kharn was smiling. His pride in his brotherhood shone from the lips of the man on the edge of death. The warrior spirit within Kharn shone through, and it proved to Angron there was something worthy within the 12th Legion. Kharn finally had his Primarch, his blood sire, and gave him his undying loyalty. But the mental shackles we place upon ourselves diminish strength. Kharn was strong, but he was also weak when it came to his father. He was not willing to betray in his ideal of what Angron could be, nor betray the brotherhood he felt for his Primarch, and it would cost him everything. The man who once valued brotherhood over everything fell down a path that caused him to spill his brother's blood. He even had the butcher's nails hammered into his head, submitting himself to mind-numbing headaches, only giving relief in the midst of blood-pumping combat. Though he told himself he had to follow this path, to shed weakness, to perform his duty to his Primarch, Kharn was no fool, and he saw the decay of Brotherhood over decades, even participating in it for his Primarch and his Legion. After 2 centuries of conflict, the Warhounds had been turned into something unrecognizable, something the other legions had begun to see. Kharn and the Legion were undisciplined and resentful to an emperor that had allowed them to become butchers, a resentment that conflicted with their loyalty to their Primarch. They were a legion falling apart, Kharn and his so-called brothers fighting against the Nails and losing. Kharn once again, weak to his Primarch's will, followed him into rebellion, losing his mind to the Nails as he slaughtered his previous battle brothers and friends upon the fields of Isfahan III. I am the Eightfold Path, words that Kharn began to scream as his mind was lost to rage and bloodlust. Words that came from something dark, a spectre that had followed him his whole life. An Ashura's path Kharn walked. His humanity was melting away as he kept doing the things Angron asked of him. It even cost him a possible path to salvation for his brothers, as his own feelings of shame and guilt caused him to murder Khaliston and the path to sanity. As the Horus Heresy raged, Kharn and the World Eaters descended further and further into depravity, and countless innocents died at their hands. Argyltal asked him why he tolerated his path, his Primarch. It is our shame to bear before the other legions, brother. Angron was broken long before he ever reached us. Why do you think we let him beat the nails into our heads? We hoped that by breaking ourselves upon the same anvil, we'd finally feel unity with our father. And it didn't work. As the flames of hatred grew within him, Argyltal kept him tethered to the last vestiges of his humanity and brotherhood. But his friend was murdered, snapping the last piece of nobility within him. He became more of a beast, and he moved with a strength and speed beyond any mortal. As a man with no friends or brothers, and with the events of the Shadow Crusade, Kharn had one thing left, his Primarch, even if he had become a monster. Once again that weakness flourished, and he followed him into the embrace of the warp for Khorne. Kharn died upon Terra, the place of his birth, confounded with the fact that he had chosen power, his one benefit to this path, and yet it meant nothing in the face of strength. Sigismund's strength. Kharn awoke following the Siege of Terra, resurrected by his dark patron. As the traitors left Terra in defeat, they spread to the corners of the galaxy. At the Battle of Scalthrallax, between the Emperor's children and the World Eaters, Kharn and the remnants of the World Eaters' legions advance stalled under a storm cold enough to kill an Astarte. Kharn became disgusted at their weakness and committed the final act upon his doomed path. He went from camp to camp and murdered everyone he came across, enemy and brother alike. It had come full circle. He'd even struck down Gruna, his once mentor, freeing himself from his last weakness, loyalty, and completing the contest of old. Wherever the name Kharn is echoed, fear and dread follows. The champion of the blood god is a hateful, fury-driven thing that exists only to revel in slaughter and death. Kharn the man is dead, a corrupted beast that calls out for blood, for the blood god is all that remains. Pity the man whose humanity has fallen to oblivion.
There is nothing left to say now. Cherished dreams slip into nothingness as they float away upon the sea of change towards the far horizon. Quietly surrendered, beyond sight, beyond touch, fading softly with the dying of the sun. There is nothing left to say now. Everything comes to an end, and we all flounder in the darkness like lost children, with no hand to hold, no place to go, no new tomorrows. There is nothing left to say now. No more songs to sing, nor stories to tell. No dawns, no sunsets in this new time, as the light is forever extinguished, and naught else remains but oblivion. The anguish of earth absolves our eyes, till beauty shines in all that we can see. War is our scourge, yet war has made us wise. And fighting for our freedom, we are free. Horror of wounds and anger at the foe, and loss of things desired, all these must pass. We are the happy legion, for we know time's but a golden wind that shakes the grass. There was an hour when we were loth to part from life we longed to share no less than others. Now, having claimed this heritage of heart, what need we more, my comrades and my brothers? All our strength, our will, has the power to shape worlds, yet it is kept in check, restrained by our beliefs, our doubt. Everyone is made up by the events of their past, and it forms walls around one's spirit, or breaks such walls down. The mind makes some powerless and gives strength to others. Because we are not ready to give up our ties or codes, we surrender ourselves. We become slaves to teachings and belief. That is why belief will always rule you. To truly believe in an ideal, you must be willing to betray it, to not to follow it so dogmatically. That is the lesson of strength. An assurer's path. You are a sad creature that cannot live without fighting, and the shadows of hatred flicker within your eyes. And for what? For wealth, ego, anger, unprincipled nature, power? Always desiring to be superior to others, having no patience for your supposed inferiors, and belittling strangers, like a hawk flying high above and looking down on others. Without strength of purpose to guide you, you only fan the flames of hatred. You can see it, can't you? In your mind? You feel the warmth and heat of it, the beast that calls out for oblivion, pulling you further from your humanity, from your sense. There is nothing left to say now. Cherished dreams slip into nothingness as they float away upon the sea of change towards the far horizon. Quietly surrendered, beyond sight, beyond touch, fading softly with the dying of the sun. There is nothing left to say now. Everything comes to an end, and we all flounder in the darkness like lost children with no hand to hold, no place to